Chapter 4 In Orange Seeds. Every time rereading the notes of Sherlock Holmes in the period 1882 to 1890, I found the story interesting, so much so that not know which to choose which. But some things have been published in newspapers, and other things without conditions. Read your eyes to the potential introduction of Sherlock show you he has reached the pinnacle of such sleuth brain? Anyway, I would like to introduce to you my love to read stories with interesting plots. Surprise! Although the association has not yet been elucidated, 1887 brought a series of much less thrilling story different. I was trying to record it all. Among them were about Paradol Chamber Story Association of Loving the Poor. He has both a Union Club's luxury ground floor, a large furniture store. The payment is related to the death of the ship Sophie Anderson. The story of the adventures of the Grice Patterson's bizarre Uffa Island. And finally the records related to the Camberwell poisoning story. In this story, by researching the structure of the watch found in the victim's dead body, has proven to be the clock just seconds before the owner died, 2 hours, so new deceased slept in that period. From the comment on the basis of scientific genius, Sherlock Holmes has found the culprit easily. All such things, maybe I'll write again in the most recent period. But the story that I note that this contains irregularities without a story can match. Back then, at the end of September, the autumn storm raging fierce, formidable show of strength of nature. All day the wind whistled loudly, pouring torrential rain as drum bumping into the window. Towards evening as more intense storms, the wind blowing on the chimneys as city kids crying hoo-hoo unanimously. On that day, sadly Sherlock sat by the fireplace and rearranging the tidy order your documents. And I sat opposite him, enthralled reading great stories of Clark Russell said about the sea. I have a passion to the hiss of the storm fell into my subconscious like the words of the story, while the rain like murmur of the waves. Today my wife has some work to the music inside her home. But I am staying in an old apartment in Baker City, Moss. Listen to behold, I said and looked at Sherlock. Looks like the doorbell call. Who would come during this storm, is not it? Or your friends? Also you out? I have no one that you both, Holmes answered, as guests then I do not encourage them to support me. The client does not it? If so, then the work is extremely serious and urgent. What can force other people out in the street in the rain hissing roar storm raging at this hour? Sometimes a woman gossiped that, your landlady to play so well? Holmes was wrong. We heard footsteps outside the room and knocking timidly. Holmes poked his long hands her the lights turned toward the empty chair. Come in, I said. A younger man of 20 to 22, grooming, dressed quite elegantly and slightly somewhat stylish. The water flows down the line umbrella, proved appalling weather. Newcomers to worry looks around, and in the light of the lamp, I saw his face and silver-faced, and their eyes filled with anxiety and hopelessness. I sincerely apologized to the two he said and handed the gold-rimmed glasses in his hand holding the eye. I hope they do not let me be nuisance. The reason I bring into the room to warm the chill steamy storm is. Take his coat and all though for me, said Holmes. I'm hanging on a hook, will dry soon. I noticed he seemed to have just come from the southwest to the town. Yes, I'm from Horsham too. Mud on his right shoe's solaces that the region's mud. I came to see him, ask him to counsel. It is easy to get him alone. And thanks for the help. The help is not always easy to come by. I've heard about him a lot, Mr. Holmes. I heard him tell the Major Prendergast has saved him as he escaped the scandal at the Tankerville Club. Well, I remember, he was a criminal gang fraud, accused of not playing fair. He said that he is fluent in all areas. He overestimated it. In the words of him, that he never failed. I've lost 4 times. 3 times by men, once by knockout wing for women. The numbers that dwarfed those victories? Well, in general I usually succeed. Then he'll be successful in my story. Call him, pulled a chair, sat a fireplace, and tell every detail very carefully. My story is very unusual. It normally never come to me. I represent the agency's most advanced slug. But anyway, sir, I still doubt that in the course of his activities, he had never heard of such horrible things that had happened to my family. He stimulates curiosity, my career too, Holmes said. First he calmly told all the facts, and then I will ask the other necessary details that I consider to be useful. My name is John Openshaw, he introduced himself. But as I understand, my job at involving other gruesome things. That was inherited, so let him grasp the facts clearly. I had to come back from the beginning of the whole history of my family. My grandfather had 2 sons, my uncle and my father, named Elias, Joseph. My father bought a small factory in Coventry. Then my father expanded scale production, then by bicycle. My father invented the bicycle rims, stainless Openshaw. Enterprise business is thriving, so after my father sold his properties so full of life and prosperity. Uncle Elias, in the year I had to take young America to do business, and became a planter in Florida, where the good work of my uncle ate very smoothly. During the war my uncle fought in the army of General Jackson, then under the command of General Hood, and was appointed to the colonel. To lay down their weapons when Lee surrendered, my uncle returned to his plantation. He lived there for 3 or 4 years. In 1869 or 1870 something, my uncle returned to Europe and rent a place not far in Sussex, near Horsham. Once in America, my uncle had saved some pretty big stakes, and took the money that my uncle left the United States with the cause as disgusting blacks and disagreed with the government in addressing reporters blacks from slavery. My uncle was a weird. He was very cruel and hot-tempered. Anger is something that he dislodged the disgusting obscenities heard. He celibacy, avoid communicating with people. I am sure that in the years of living in Horsham, not once did my uncle the street. My uncle had a garden and 2 or 3 pieces of vacant land around the house. He just walks in that area played only. There were weeks of my uncle sat in the room. He drank alcohol and smoked a lot. Far isolated people, even to his younger brother he is not even known. He expressed love me, although I first met when I was 12. Years that doctors 1878. During that time I have lived in England for 8 or 9 years. Uncle, I negotiate with my father to give me to live with him. He loves me. In times not drunk, uncle used to play chess with my jump. He completely entrusted everything in my house. By the year I turned 16, I really am the boss in the house. I hold the key. Types everywhere want to be, do whatever they want, but with one condition, not to disrupt the quiet solitude of his uncle. Besides, I also bound by the exceptions, in the mezzanine with a room always closed. Physicians do not allow any person to, including me. With the curiosity of children, there are times I peek through the keyhole, but did not see anything outside the chest and miscellaneous pocket something. One day in March 1883, a letter with a foreign envelope stickers on the table. My uncle almost never have a sale because everything he were paid in cash, while friends are not. Since India is sending, he said, holding the letter. The postmark closed in Pondicherry. What could happen here? My uncle quickly tore the envelope of seeds from dried oranges falling clang of china plates. I rang up too, but my smile went off when I looked soaked my uncle. His lower lip hanging down, eyes wide with goggle, both became dull grey face. He looked at the envelope. Estate is on the hands trembling. KKK. He exclaimed, and then added, "Oh my God! Oh my God! This is the payment of my debts." "That is what, sir?" I asked. "Death." He finished speaking and standing up out of the chair and slowly went into his room. To his left, flabbergasted, and I panicked. I took the envelope and looked inside to find 3 letters K in red ink. In the envelope there is nothing more, in addition to 5 dried orange seeds. What makes me scared, doctors? I got up and ran upstairs. My uncle went down on the handle. A rusted old key has many, perhaps the key to open the room on the mezzanine. In the other hand he was holding a box of brass. We want to do gi.mac them. Anyway, doctors cannot give them anywhere. My uncle told curse, resentment. I told Mary to a fireplace in the room, physician groups, and invite Fordham, lawyers in Horsham too. I take all the orders that doctors told me wrong. When his lawyer arrived, they called me up to my room, my uncle. The fire in the fireplace blazing, on its floor plate is a thick pile of ashes, ashes of a tangle seemed just burned papers. Brass box opens empty. Looking at the box, I sighed, fearing for seeing the inside lid is engraved with 3 letters K just like on the envelope. I want you to be the witness to make a record of this, John, my uncle said. He will leave this place for the children of doctors, i.e. my father. Of course it will be passed down to grandchildren. If I can use a peaceful way, it is very good. But if you do not have the ability to do that, then listen to the advice of doctors is to give it back to the most cruel enemy of uncle. Uncle very sorrow while leaving her an inheritance so, but doctors do not understand how that happens. Rejoice and sign this sheet in one where he will show her Fordham. I did sign the papers, and he brought it straightened. Lawyer. Very strange case, makes me wonder, and there is a deep impression. I thought about it but never found the answer. I cannot dispel fear's cloud cover, although the feeling of anxiety had decreased after a few weeks passed quietly, with no sign of any changing the daily lives of us. Confess that I have noticed great changes in human depth. My uncle. He's drinking more horrible and shunned all the outside world. Most of the time he sat in the room door locked. But sometimes while drunk he walked out of the room with a pistol in hand, rejected the garden and shout out that he was not afraid of anyone, nor to any person, or the devil touched him and cut him as tight sheep. Nevertheless, but the anger has subsided. Drunk, he hurried to his room, shut the door, locked the drive, install. Then, as a man fears being covered from every side, could not hold itself up. In the heat of the moment, my uncle's face, including those frigid days, millet, and still sweating profusely, as just one of a sauna. To end this tragic story, Mr. Holmes, and also from abuse of his patients, I just mention briefly the following outcomes. One day it was nearly dark. After drank, my uncle made a jaunt. Then we did not see him any more. We panic rushed off to search, and it is miserable to see him lying face down in a pond full of water. The algae-covered pond lies deep in the garden. On who he did not see a trace, beaten at all, while the pond is very shallow, depth just less than 2 feet. Therefore, the appellate court only pay attention to the unusual features of my uncle to the conclusion that this was a suicide. But I know for sure that in mind as my uncle's death frightened, so how can I volunteer? Doctors leave this world easily and quickly, so whatever you want, whatever the reality remains stark, cover all. My father, who inherited the property, is £14,000 in the bank. Excuse me, Holmes interrupted him. His story was extraordinary and mysterious, is hard to imagine now. His doctors tell me the letter he received and his day to die someday. The letter to the March 9, 1883, and then my uncle died right 7 weeks, i.e. 1 St. Night Radiant St. May 2, 1883. Thank you, ask him to continue. When my father started to power, inherited my uncle's property in Horsham, then follow my recommendation. My father thoroughly searched mezzanine chamber, in which the former is always closed. We found a brass box, but inside seemed to be cancelled out. Inside lid stuck a note, 3 letters K and a small bottom lines letters, record receipts, loan contracts. I think those words speak. The contents of the papers have been put inside the box, and Colonel Openshaw had been burned. In addition to the box in the chamber, nothing significant, if not throw a messy pile of paper and miscellaneous logbook related to my uncle's life in America. In the jumble of stuff he had mentioned during the war and showed my uncle was a soldier, implement its obligations very good. The other papers are talking about the period established in southern states, mostly related to political issues. Apparently my uncle played a big role in the opposition, in contrast to leaders from the north were sent to. In early 1884, my father moved permanently to live in Horsham. Everything is very nice. One day, on January 4, 1885, when we were having breakfast, my father suddenly exclaimed aghast. A hand holding an envelope, my father, while the other is in the palm of dried orange seeds. My father, often ridiculed by the death of his mythical colonel, and now my father is shocked panic when the right to receive notice of such death. What's this? John, my father whispered. My heart suddenly cold. It's a 3-letter K, I replied. My father looked at the inside of the envelope. Right here are 3 words. But what is this? Put all the paper pads to place solar clock. Looking over my father's shoulder, I read. What sundial? The paperwork is he anyway? My father startled surprise. Sundial placed in the garden, and burnt papers make it. Damn it all, we go. My father said. We live in a civilized country, unable to accept what was bullshit. The letter from Dundee, I replied, after having caught a glimpse of the postmark. A joke of a fool blindly certain, my father said. Sundials and paper-related cheeks dragged on just what to do other functions. Do not bother approval, watch him do what the hell. I want to tell the police, I say, anxious. in order for people to get made fun of your father. He did not think so. So let me do it themselves. No way, I do not want to ring the bell loud people that I was a madman. Convincing my father too was in vain, because he's very stubborn. And I shall be tormented fear. 3 days later, my father went to visit an old friend. He Freebody Major, was commander of a fort on the hill Proloxtown. I'm glad my father was gone, so I thought out this house will be less dangerous. But I was wrong. The next day I received a telegram sent by Mr. Major, asking me to hurry. My father fell into a chalk quarry deep set, in this locality so many holes. I rushed over to my father. Broken skull, dead, he could not last farewell word. My father went from Fairmont at dusk, where my father is not fluent terrain chalk quarries which are not carefully fencing, so the appeals court concluded without hesitation even collapse in the event of significant sorry. I studied carefully the facts relating to the death of my father, but could not detect anything to the conclusion it was a sophisticated murder. No traces of beatings, no sign stains on the ground. I just particular to him, I am extremely anxious and feel like my father had entered the traps available. I automatically become heir to the entire patrimony of sufferings seen like that. He may ask me, why do not you refuse to inherit property was bloody? I answered him, saying, I confirmed the unfortunate thing happened with my family relating to these events very ancient secrets in the life of the deceased uncle and similar threats to any of where, always ready to fall on me, though I do so at home. My father died fated in January 1885. Since then have 2 years 8 months passed. All-time series that I completely left alone in Horsham and hope the other accursed story is no longer weighing on my family anymore. I think after the death of my uncle's generation, my father, it also always leave under past. But I hope too soon. Yesterday morning I was stunned. The letters still knocking on the door of death to life are peaceful. The man pulled out from his pocket a crumpled envelope, flipped back, yielded seeds in dry orange tablecloth put down. The envelope here, he said, postmark stationed in London, East Zone. Inside still 3-letter K confusing and the words let's put all the paper pads sundial in place. He did what then? Holmes asked. Never do anything? Never do anything? Strictly speaking, he slumped into small hands. I am helpless like a mouse being chased along the road. A serpent lies dormant waiting just no almost solid. Looks like I was falling into the hands of a supernatural power cannot escape and no way to save well. He said that wonder. Sherlock consolation uttered hastily, he needs to act urgently. Otherwise he will die. Only the will and capacity to be able to save his life, Now is not the time to despair. I went to see the police. There has been resolved then? Listen to me, they just laughed. I think he was police commander for the letters of a joke, the other guys that are bored. As for the death of my family members, according to the judge certified just unfortunate circumstances only. It has nothing towards the threat, warning. Holmes swung his fist in the air. Absurd, not imagine? He grievances. Nevertheless, it is also sending. A policeman came to me, who was on duty around the clock in my room. He has not come here to accompany him? No, they ordered him to sit in the house. Again, Holmes swung his fist up, angry. He came here to do? He asked. Important is why he is not here right now to receive mail? I do not know. Just yesterday I was talking of the danger of Major Prendergast. I gave him, and he advised me to come to you. It's been 2 days now. He should have acted sooner to know. He has no further data beyond the new ones he told it. There are certain facts suggest to help us, is not? There's one more detail, said John Openshaw. He dug in his pocket and took out Coates' blue piece of paper, stained, put on the table. I just remembered. He continued. During the day my uncle burned all the paper. Documents are left unburned. This up, lying in ashes in her. I found on the floor of my uncle's room. I think this is a piece of paper accidentally left in the other incineration. Also some seeds committed in this paper have nothing helpful to me. I think it is a page of diary. Stroke is my uncle. Holmes rotating lights, and we both bent down to look at the paper. Border with scratches choppy, this paper proves to be torn in a particular notebook. The top has the words, March 1869. Bottom has just read the question, just guessing, as follows. 4th. Hudson present, at the jetties as before. 7th. Sent the seeds of oranges for Macaulay, Paramore, and John Swain from St. Augustine. 9th. Macaulay did get out of the ground. 10th. John Swain did get out of the ground. Day 12. Paramore was to knock on the door. Everything is smooth. Thank you, Holmes said, and put the paper return to the young visitors. Right now he just quickly, urgently embark on. We do not need to spend a little more time to debate what he has just said. He needs to come home immediately and take action immediately. What do I do now? Does every one job only, but should be dealt with immediately. He must place the paper that he just showed us into the brass box, which he had said earlier. He put in a letter that the news is all the remaining papers were his uncle and burned crockery being the only remaining piece of paper only. He must notify this to cause belief. After he finished writing his letter, immediately put the other brass box on the plate of the sundial as it requested in the letter. You understand? I fully understand him. He should remember the current, should not think about revenge, or a similar thought. So I propose to have sex punishable by law, but we also need to unfurl a haul, however they then tries. So first of all need to get rid of termites. Danger is threatening him. And then we will clarify the murky and punish the murderers. Thank you, the man said, standing up to get dressed in the jacket. He has returned to my life and hope. I will act exactly as he was taught. Do not waste even a single minute before. It is important to watch yourselves. Obviously indisputable that he is facing the threat of thousands of very thin. He returned by way. I'll take the train from Waterloo Station. Less than 21 hours. Streets are still crowded. I hope he will have peace. But nevertheless he should also prevent enemies. I brought the room under the pistol. Very good, tomorrow I will embark on his work. It means that I will see you at Horsham. Oh! That is the secret of work. In London, the key here. I will find him. Well, I'll look back to him 1 or 2 more days and notify him all the work involved in paper boxes made of brass and the other cheek. I'll get it right, all of what he commanded. He shook hands and bid farewell. We leave. The wind is still roaring hiss. Continuous rain has knocked on the window. Thrilling tragic story. The other has made us somewhat forget the sorrow of the persistent storm, is now invading covered back. Holmes sat silently, his head slightly bent down, staring intently into the glowing flames in a fireplace. Fire burns. He sucked up a pipe, then leaned back, sat and watched the smoke gently undulating. Green as associated successive fly on the ceiling. Watson, I think, he finally broke the silence. In the cure of me probably never encountered dangerous incidents, thrilling than this. But first you set yourself a specific regulation on dangerous nature of what has happened? I ask. There is no doubt about its relative nature. He answered. But how specifically? Who has named KKK? And he kept hanging on like a leech. That unfortunate family. For what purpose? Holmes closed his eyes, leaned his chair and folded his hands together. A formal inference, he commented. Upon seeing a single data in both, master can draw from that is not the whole chain of events that make it up, but also see the consequences will occur followed. Cuvier could also describe an animal that relies solely on the basis of one of its bones. One observer study a link in the whole chain of events, the need to rebuild all of the remaining chains, including prefixes and suffixes. But art cannot make inferences culminate extreme, the inference must use all of the facts have been covered up. To do this, he needs to have the knowledge of certain general. If my memory does not reflect me, the first day we knew each other, he has determined the exact boundaries of my knowledge. Exactly. I replied with a smile. It is a document abnormalities. I remember is this, astronomy, philosophy and political subjects standing in the zero position. Knowledge in the field of botany has always fluctuated, in the deeper geology. By the work involved in the dirty stain of any region in the 50-mile limit around London, also in the field of chemistry, the humorous, quirky. In anatomy, the asynchronous scattered, disjointed. In the field of literary entertainment, exceptional knowledge. In it, the boxer, the sword, and lawyers are themselves poisoned himself with opium and tobacco. That is the most basic definition of a judgment, my assessment. Holmes laughed so delightedly, to hear me speak the same languages. As I said it, the old man must control his mind how to tangle knowledge collocation tidy intellectual treasure, so that the time needed can be retrieved easy search not rummage. We internally in tonight need to mobilize all capital that we have. He took his book to help Encyclopedia America 1, set with K. It is located on a shelf, near where he sat there. Thank you. Now we will set out the assumptions and from which to draw conclusions. First, start from his Colonel Openshaw preview for whatever reason he left the country. In ancient times people do not tend to break down his habit to self-repudiation voluntary departure from the wonderful climate in Florida, then lived a reclusive life in his hometown England's side this season. The amorous enjoy seclusion signify that he was afraid that something or someone, or something like that. We confirmed this hypothesis based on letters scary intimidation that he and heirs have received. He has commented about the seal on the envelope that the first letter from Pondicherry, a second from Dundee, a Tuesday from London. From the East London. He concluded what? It is the ocean harbour. Apparently the letter writer was sailor. Fantastic. We've got the keys. Fully capable people right living on a ship. And now we will look at this issue from different aspects. In the case of Pondicherry, the interval between the word intimidation carried spaced about 7 weeks. In the case of Dundee, distance was only 3 or 4 days. What do you think? Distance in larger cases should first take time to implement long. Then. But the letters also have such large distances? I have to. No understanding of the situation? There are grounds to withdraw the comment that the ship that the killer was living as a yacht, or a group living as a sailboat. As in similar cases, they always send out the warning then enforce the verdict. He saw no case from Dundee happen quickly do? If we go by ship from Pondicherry, then they come along with the letter. But here again 7 weeks. 7 weeks is the difference between the speed of the postal ship brought the letter to the speed of the sailboat that flood workers live. There can be like. That's for sure. Based on that you immediately see the deadly danger in the event of late. You know why he advised me to be cautious and rather open shop. Penalties are always inflicted on deadline necessary for those who have sent letters to overcome the distance on the sailboat. But the end of this letter was sent from London, so we cannot allow yourself to procrastinate. Oh my God! I exclaimed. The other strict arrest mean? Clearly as day, papers were open. Shaw walked off carrying a secret that involves the survival of us on the sailboat. For this boat is not only one guy. A person cannot participate in too ingenious murder, leaving no trace. In this story to a couple of hands in the name, they are more like killer connoisseurs and not shaking hands. The documents that we want to recapture by being, whether it is in the hands of someone ignored. Exactly so he saw no K.K.K. where is the name of a person, which is the sign implies a secret society somehow. To what? I have not ever heard. Holmes flicking through the pages on the lap of his men are. Here they are written like this. Ku Klux Klan was the name comes from the sound similar to slices of gun regulations. Dangerous secret organization has its fearsome military veterans south after the Civil War established, and after a short time was quickly set up branches in other states. Mostly Tennessee, Louisiana, the state Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida. This organization used violence to serve political purposes, primarily terrorism, assassinations of candidates for deputies to blacks, or expulsion from the country, killing those who opposed their opposing views. They're usually warned first and then implemented. A word of caution for those who just send them to assassinate the poetic form, but everyone familiar, in some territory in the country, an oak leaves, while others are a few melon seeds, or orange seeds. After receiving the warning, people, or change their views, or to leave the country. If you do not pay attention to the warnings, he was sent to death is inevitable. Death is usually a quirky, unpredictable. This organization is very tight leadership. It devised measures effective action that no one can discover or inevitable death bitterly. Never the perpetrators were unmasked. Organizations are formed in 2 or 3 years despite the government's repression of the United States of America and the progressive strata of the people. In 1869 the activities of this secret organization suddenly terminated, but still happen several terrorist attacks. Did you see it? Holmes said, flicking through the book. the abnormal termination of the activities of the organization against this murderous duplication with the departure of Openshaw. He has collected all the documents of the organization papers carries repatriation. It is likely that the causes and results are on this point. It is no coincidence the other barbaric cruelty on pursuing Openshaw family forever. He does not understand, and the statistics diary may be libelous, defamatory. The most famous works of the southern U.S. and these documents has caused many who lose sleep. This means that your documents has been found. That's it. It is something that people expect. If I'm not mistaken, then in stating, sent the seeds for ABC, it means that they have sent warnings. Followed by several lines A and B were naff off the ground, means they have left the country to go. C was also visited. I'm afraid Mr. C has ended not nice. We could also shed light on this murky affairs. The road to rescue the other young Openshaw is to act just like I counseled. Today we cannot add any more and cannot do anything else. He put his guitar on loan. We had painstakingly sat silent for half an hour to forget the bad weather and forget actions went far worse. Human mutilated. Nearly new light storm 10. Sun blush cracked up through the dark clouds shining brightly into London. When I went down, Holmes began breakfast. Sorry, I had to start without waiting. He said. I foresee that I have to work hard today because the story of Openshaw. Where are you prepared to? I ask. This depends on the correct assessment of me. Maybe I should look to Horsham. Do not go there before the stars? No, I will start from city. He called the maid, brought coffee to go. While waiting for the coffee, I took the paper on the table and leafed through the items. Suddenly a column brought me a cold. Holmes, I exclaimed. He slowed gone. What's up? He said and put down the coffee cup. I have predicted that this would happen. What happened? His voice was very calm. We felt he was intensely emotional. The name Openshaw has caught my eye, and headings. Tragic story of Waterloo Bridge is like this. Last night at around 21 to 22 hours, a police officer named Cook, while on patrol guarding Waterloo Bridge, heard a cry for help and the sound of water bomb. But by the pitch-black sky, the wind roared rushing, so although rushed to help, still not recovered river who drowned. Police sirens immediately popular, and thanks to the emergency boat, corpse was found. It was a young man, his name under the envelope found in People as John Openshaw, living near Horsham. One guess he was too quick to take the last train from Waterloo Station, comes in thick darkness and slipped down under the bridge. On the victim's body did not show a trace detection beaten.